earbuds fucked it up. I don't know why. It's very
Uh,
odd. Let me get the Twitch
No
stream open
biggie.
because the Twitch stream is happening. So that's fun.
Awesome. Hello, everybody.
Yeah, hello everyone. This is Stream Manager. That's what
Overbyte Podcast Episode 3, Version
Correct.
2.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, is it happening? It should be happening.
I believe.
Oh, it
Well,
was paused.
maybe you can check that.
Why did it? Oh, I'm in the wrong account on Twitch. That's why. That would do it. Anyways,
Or
yeah.
are you
I'm
you're
on.
casting to Brother Earth?
No, I'm casting to the right one. I am signed in on Firefox to Control Alt Repeat podcast from my Pod Studios.
So you guys should go ahead and subscribe to that one as well. Also hosted by Mr. Mikey here.
Yep, that's correct. Twitch, give me my code, please, so I can sign in. Thank you. Yeah, so welcome back over at Podcast, episode number 3. Actually, a lot of stuff this week happened. So
I feel like it's just going to be picking up more and more as we get closer to the Overwatch movie starting again. But yeah, a decent amount of Overwatch stuff happened this week. Let's start us off, Mike. Go for it.
Yeah, so this is like kind of Overwatch news, but not really.
Just something that made us happy.
Yeah, Ants, formerly of San Francisco Shock, obviously just an absolute, god of a hit scan player. Obviously, Shock has a lot of reasons, but one of the large parts of San Francisco Shock last year, winning everything. He announced in the offseason he was going to take a break from Overwatch at the least because he was not having a great mental health time. But he got picked up for T1 for their Valorant team, so not for Overwatch.
Yeah.
But so that's good to see that he's, getting back out there doing something. It's always good to see.
Oh yeah, I honestly you see all these crazy Overwatch players going and being successful in Valorant, and from what I understand, especially when Valorant first came out, people were sleeping on the Overwatch players.
Yeah.
They were just like, these guys don't need to aim, which fair. Overwatch is one of the less mechanically intensive games. That doesn't mean that we don't have some pretty good mechanically skilled players. I saw this clip of Baby Bay just absolutely tearing it up the other day, and that was super cool to see. I'm really, really hyped to see these guys doing well. I think Ansel would do well as well.
Yeah, I agree. He's got the aim for sure. Another thing that happened this week was the Roadhog Skin that was previously announced, the championship one for San Francisco Shock, went live. In addition to that, they also launched the Echo MVP skin for Fleta. And that one is also so good. They're both fantastic skins. Yeah. So those are available and will be until at least the start of the Overwatch League. But I don't know if they probably had an end date, but who knows. But one other thing.
They usually don't. I guess they do take it away eventually, right? I don't think you can still buy the Jonak skin, and definitely can't buy the other one anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. And then it hasn't actually been officially announced anywhere, but there's been screenshots from people who would know this saying that, this is the last skin for an MVP. So that kind of sucks, but whatever, I guess, whatever.
Yeah. It was kind of a really, really cool thing that they were doing, right? To immortalize these really, really good players who have succeeded professionally at the game in the game.
Mm-hmm.
But I do understand with the whole debacle with the having to, it ties that person to the reputation of the game, and Overwatch's community hasn't always been the most reputable and honorable community, so true. I completely understand them not doing it anymore.
I think it's fine. Another interesting thing that happened this week, picture it, here I am scrolling through YouTube, and I see an Overwatch video. I look at who makes it. Oh, video game Dunkey. Dunkey. Yeah, I love Dunkey. Great YouTuber, fantastic writer. But he's made Overwatch videos in the past, not since Overwatch first came out. But he released one on Overwatch 2 titled Overwatch 2 Don't Be Doo-Doo, where basically he just talks about, you know, what he kind of wants from a game like Overwatch 2. He talks about how the multiplayer online genre is at a weak point right now, and Overwatch 2 could really be that next big game if they, you know, don't take forever and something else bigger comes along.
Yeah, and I mean, he had this interesting take. Like, obviously, he was talking a lot about how really cool for casual players to do the kind of campaign co-op stuff. And how co-op shooters aren't really thought of very highly currently, and this could change that. Overwatch has really been strong about its characters, right? That's always been the strong selling point, and making these guys playing into these like roles and to these characters would make a really good single player or story based game. But also, he had mentioned one interesting thing, which maybe I could get your opinion on, because I'm not sure how I felt about it. He said that you should be designing the game so that people are rewarded for playing it the right way.
Or they're rewarded for playing it the fun way, not necessarily the quote-unquote right way.
Well, he's saying that people are going to play it the fun way. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
And design abilities that reward you for playing like with your team or like towards a team objective. Because he did have a good point that, you know, you see these people who like int into backlines and like play offense on defense, specifically because it is fun to get kills. It is a lot of fun to get kills in Overwatch, and I can't deny this. Sometimes, you know, I play Reddit Lucio sometimes just because like, you know, I'm a support, but I can frag, and it's really fun to look at the people who get really mad when I'm fragging you on support. But like, there has to be, in order for the game to be healthy, those fun things need to also be like the thing that is strategically best to do. And I do agree that I think that's something that Overwatch doesn't do enough. A lot of, you know, you have, especially for main tanks, right? Main tanks have like one of the most thankless roles and like least fun roles in the game for a lot of times, especially when it's meta, right? When you gotta be on that Orisa, just close your eyes and think of England, right? You gotta play what you gotta play. It would be a lot better to have, you know, these people get rewarded and have fun playing the role that you're playing. And I'm still a little skeptical about some of the changes that they're making for Overwatch 2, but I do agree that philosophy is the right one to take.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of the times the quote-unquote right thing to do in Overwatch is so unobvious that I would argue that a lot of players at, you know, medium, low rank don't even know what the right thing is half the time, unless you're playing in GM top 500. That's the only time you really
somebody
get
who's coached some lower ranked players. That is 100% true.
Yeah. So I think, just another reason why just making the fun things to do more so the right things to do is that it makes it more obvious what you're supposed to be doing. You don't have to be deep into the game theory to feel like you're doing the right thing and feel like you're having a very big impact on the game, which I think is good for the overall health of the community.
That's true. That's something that, like, you know, growing up, I grew up playing shooters. I know a lot of people didn't play shooters a whole lot, but growing up playing shooters, I would play games like Halo and Call of Duty, and it was really obvious what you were supposed to do there. It was shoot the guys, and as long as you were shooting the guys better than they were shooting the guys, you won. But Overwatch is this kind of new kind of game, and I'm really excited to see shooters like this evolving, like hero-based shooters incorporating some like team-based tactic stuff from like Counter-Strike, and I mean even like, you know, professional Halo and professional Call of Duty at the times, like there was a higher level metagame.
Yeah.
But it did eventually just come down to I shot the guys better than you shot the guys. Maybe you had specialized roles, but Overwatch is this kind of like very much more tactical shooter, and like where team play matters above everything else.
Yeah.
And that isn't very rewarding individually unless you are invested with your team to win, right? Like some of the best Overwatch I've ever played is playing on a 6v6 team, like organized with the same team every week, right? Like it's peak Overwatch when you're playing with a team and you're organized and you're all going towards a specific strategy and a specific goal. And that's hard to get in solo queue, and not very good for the health of the game overall because you have some assholes gating good teams and stuff like that. So,
True.
Anytime where you have a significant part of the game that makes it fun gated by social mechanics, that's not great. It happened in World of Warcraft a lot with like guilds, where, in order to do raiding really early on in like Classic and Burning Crusade and things like that, there was only like 2 big guilds on any one server, and you were pretty much beholden to every asshole at the raiding guild if you wanted to get any like really good level gear stuff. And so they fixed that now, but like, Overwatch I feel like suffers from that problem a little bit too, that it's hard to get into these organized games where Overwatch is at its peak. So definitely Overwatch 2 needs to address these kind of like fun and enjoyable part of the game, because it's always been good fundamentally. Like the game itself is good, it's balanced most of the time. And the meta is they change often enough at this point. Some people complain that it's too slow, some people complain it's too fast, whatever. But I mean, I think that they need to address the fun aspect of it. Like, right, overall, the game should be fun to play.
Yeah, definitely. And especially if all indications of what we've heard in Overwatch 2 imply that they are very much going after the casual player base. They want to be the next, Fortnite type thing. And I think a lot of that, they're going for, or at least reportedly, it hasn't been confirmed, but everything points to them doing a free-to-play model. So it really seems like they're going after the casual base. And I agree that if you want to successfully do that, you just have to make it more accessible. And a lot of that comes down to, making it easier to understand. So but overall, a really good video. Go check it out if you haven't seen it. Really good on Dunkey's channel. I mean, everything Dunkey makes is, I think, great. I think he's one of the most talented writers, period, out there right now. But
and one of the last things in that video, like we have it in the show notes here, that I did think he was talking about these side objectives and adding to the game, because Overwatch is very much 2 teams going at each other, and even if they're not like brawl, like running at each other, like they're posturing around a central fight area. Basically, teams pick an area to fight around or fight for. Where he was talking on more side objectives, and there was this recent workshop mode that incorporated things from like Destiny, which was called Conquest, and it was basically like domination from Call of Duty. If anybody else has ever played that, it's 3 points around a map that you have to try to control as many of those points as you can, and you get points for kills. I think that's a really interesting game mode. I think it rewards individual play more. But also, like, you're never going to, teamwork is still necessary. You're never going to solo carry in those situations. But it does reward individuals a bit more, like, I'm getting a lot of the kills. I'm securing a lot of the zones, right? Like, you do get the feeling that you personally are doing something all the time. Which is cool.
I think it would be cool, Since Overwatch, at its most basic, concept of what Overwatch was a first-person MOBA, so side objectives would tie into that a lot. So I would like to see it. I think it would be fun. Maybe not. I feel like at this point Overwatch is kind of a decided thing of how it runs. So maybe they have to make a new mode to introduce it, or like new modes, maybe. Which I know that they're adding supposedly more than just push. I think they've said so. That'll maybe, who knows. Another thing that happened this week that was good.
UberX is back as casters for the Overwatch League, and they are by far my favorite casters. They have been since season 1. I think everybody loved the old Monty Doa, but I felt like that was all the Korean fanboys from Apex coming back over. I always loved UberX. Uber is boisterous and over the top, and Mr. X always just very measured and like has decent. When Mr. X reacts, you know it's crazy. They're both funny guys. They have great personalities. They play off each other well. I'm so glad they're coming back.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's fantastic. This was announced in Uber. Made a YouTube video where he talks about kind of his future and freelance stuff. And pretty good video. Give it a watch for sure on Uber's YouTube channel. But he later on, actually, I don't know if you saw this, Andrew, in a
Probably
tweet,
not.
he leaked what Bren and Sideshow are doing for the next year. Yeah, so yeah, they won't be coming back next year because they're actually in talks with Netflix to make a reality show in Siberia where they go ice fishing with only their ass cheeks. It's a real tweet that Uber put out.
This is a meme, right?
Yeah, it's a meme, but it's a real tweet that Uber put out saying that's what they were going to be doing next year.
That's absolutely amazing. I love Uber.
Oh, yeah.
God. Also, for anybody who didn't know, Uber just became a dad recently.
He did.
So congratulations to him.
Yeah, for sure.
Hell yeah.
Another thing that happened this week, speaking of Bren, this one's real.
Yeah.
He's taking a hiatus from content creation, specifically Plat Chat is what he does mostly. That's his content creation. And he had a whole big twit longer. It was very well written, Bren is very well.
You would expect.
Yeah, you would expect him to be when he wants to be well written. He is. He isn't.
He's a being lord, but he's an intelligent.
Yeah. So he's basically, going through a rough time right now, mental health wise. Something that he's talked about in the past, having suffered with a lot. So he was taking a break. So yeah, go send the lad some love. He deserves it.
I think that needs to be normalized a little bit more. Yeah. Content creation nowadays, like the most efficient way to make money as a content creator is to get up, shower, maybe and turn on streaming, start streaming every day, grind it, right? Which as long as your stream is on, you're making money, and you can output, for every 1 hour of content you do on Twitch, that's an hour on Twitch, which you get paid for. That's an hour on YouTube, which you can get paid for. That's, a TikTok that you could make that you can get paid for, right? Sure. Like, it's just the more content that you put out there, the better. And a lot of the times, it's not even about playing the game. It's about creating content. And that's a lot of it's taxing mentally, right? Like, you're not playing with your friends. You're playing with people who will get you more viewers. And, all these kind of things. I think it's a lot to put on somebody. And so I think taking some time away from, like anybody else, right? Just taking a vacation or taking anything like that. Content creators don't really do that because the perception is that they have an easy job, but it is still a job, and there is still some pressures that go along with it. So I think that we need to make it okay for people to take breaks when they need to. Sure. And I really hope that that Bren gets back to being some good health, because we love him on Plat Chat and we love him in the Overwatch League. Godspeed, bud.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, very well said. Another thing that happened today, we're kind of flying through the news here, but it's okay. The Overwatch League official website put out a news article basically about what the viewing experience is going to be like for the next year. All really good stuff. I'm really happy with everything they announced. So one thing they're announcing, token drops for viewing rewards are going to be a lot easier. Thank goodness.
It didn't even work half the time last year.
Yeah, man. It didn't even work half the time. I never got any of the rewards for watching the grand finals, even though I watched all of it. So that stinks. Wow. But anyways, yeah, previously you had to watch on the website and it was janky. It never really worked. But CDL, the Call of Duty League, this past season launched a thing with YouTube where you just link your account and you can watch on YouTube. And that's what Overwatch is doing now. So you can link your Blizzard account to a YouTube account and you'll get drops for watching on YouTube, including for the upcoming Flash Ops tournament for the experimental card. So you want to get on this soon if you are going to watch that.
If you haven't played on that patch yet, it is a freaking buster clock, man.
It's nutty, yeah.
I don't know what be happening half the time.
Yeah, honestly.
Torque hurts in the feed consistently.
True. Yeah. Yeah, another interesting excerpt. There you From the article that I thought was interesting, so I pulled out. This is verbatim. Quote, this season, you'll be able to earn League tokens to use on a wider selection of Overwatch League skins and sprays, including 2 new legendary skins going on sale tomorrow. A custom opening week spray designed by Zoe Find, however you say, Zoe, and more, end quote. So, yeah, 2 new legendary skins. I bet you it's probably just going to be like what people have asked for a long time of the gray Overwatch League skins for people. People have asked to be able to buy those for a long time, so
I mean, I have they gave the pack out when you signed up for the Overwatch League thing, where I think you got the gray McCree, the gray Moira, gray Tracer, and
Junkrat.
Junkrat, right?
And Soldier.
I use that gray Tracer skin all the time, man. She's really good for blending into the background.
I use all of them except the Widowmaker one, because I don't like Widowmaker's default gun, but otherwise I use them all.
Very fair, very fair.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, that's awesome. I'm glad that they're, the Overwatch League just existing isn't enough for people to care about it. They need something to get them invested in the team, in the tournament, in the players, and then you'll get to hook people based on that, right? Like, it's not enough of a draw right away. You need to get people in, and then they'll start caring. But another cool thing that every match is now going to be available in 4K. So go buy your 4K TV and stream it to that, I guess.
This is actually really exciting for me because I have a 4K monitor, so I'm so hyped for this.
I'm sitting here with a 1440 like a pleb.
Yeah, this is going to be super. I mean, I would be very surprised if I have the bandwidth to do it, but I'm going to try it.
Overwatch is one of those games, you don't need it in 4K. Overwatch looks as good in 1080 as it does in 4K.
That's where you're wrong. Overwatch looks so good in 4K. When I didn't have a graphics card this past year and I was playing on 1080, it was rough. It was rough. I'm telling you.
But to be fair, like, if you're playing any kind of shooter at a serious level and you're not playing on the lowest graphic settings, you're throwing.
Fair.
So nobody's going to notice it. I think there was this story once of a pro player who like was looking at a map in like 4K and was like, wait, what is that? Like, just like there were like details on the map that he like didn't even know were there. It was like chains on King's Row or vines on Temple of Anubis, like things that would block Widowmaker headshot sight lines, and they're just like, nah.
Yeah. Yeah, true. Yeah, that's cool. This is unrelated to Overwatch League, just more YouTube in general, but YouTube Gaming now has clip features, which is pretty cool. So on Twitch, you could clip something cool that happened. YouTube was a lot more difficult. You had to have a screen recorder and editing software and all this stuff to get what you wanted, but now you can just do it on YouTube. So that'll be really cool for, fan interaction and stuff. So that's awesome to see.
And who edits things? Losers, right? Like...
Yeah, true. And another thing they announced was something they're calling Encore Matches, which...
Yeah, they had mentioned this before. This was for people who are fans of the APAC teams, but don't want to get up at 4 a.m. to watch their favorite team.
Yeah.
As a Nixel fan, I'm very appreciative of this. But what is it actually, Mike?
Yeah, so it's cool. It's like Andrew said, a rebroadcast for APAC for an American time zone, which if you want to still watch the APAC games at 4 a.m., you can. But it's to give the American fans, the experience of watching it live that you miss out on. And one of the things that comes with it is the old rebroadcasts they did last year. You couldn't get token drops for watching, but you can get token drops for the rebroadcasts now. So that's really cool because you don't have to run your computer all night if you want to get token drops like I used to.
I will admit that I totally had set an alarm for 4:30 in the morning before to turn on my computer to farm those tokens, and then went right back to bed.
Yeah.
No doing that anymore, which is great.
Yeah. So overall, I think just really fantastic things. A lot of things people have been asking for the entirety of Overwatch League being on YouTube, so really good to see.
Yeah, I'm glad to see them getting some of the fun. It was always a little bit weird to see them go to YouTube because Twitch had this capability and this
Yeah.
function all built in and everything like that. And now everybody's just like, yay, you're back where you started 2 years ago.
With better ways to watch VODs.
I guess. But still no ability for me to buy an all-access pass and watch the single perspectives that I want. I certainly miss that.
Yeah, that would be cool.
What are you going to do? Regardless, that was the Overwatch news this week.
Yeah.
A lot of good stuff.
Sure.
But let's move on to our team previews for this week.
Yeah.
And I'm going to let you start this one off because just like you let me take care of the Nixon one, you got your favorite team coming up now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is, of course, the Houston Outlaws. So, yeah, they're kind of a retooled team, which is it's good. So, whole new tank line. They're bringing over Django and Piggy from Talon Esports, which it's a tank line it's very unproven at the highest levels. Talon Esports was a good Korean contenders team, but not one of the elite Korean contenders teams. But the hype around this tank line really stems from one thing, really, and that was Matthew Super Delisi saying that when they were in Korea for the grand finals, they scrimmed against Talon Esports a lot, and he considered them their actual best scrim opponent that they played while out there. Because obviously they weren't playing the Owl teams in scrims because, they're about to play them for the finals. No one wants to reveal their strategies.
Want to show their hand. Yeah, of course.
So, but he said that Talon was the best team they scrimmed when they were out there, so that's what a lot of the hype around this tank line is. But of course, it's still extremely unproven. They really were only playing Talon Esports on one meta, so it's still to be determined. But it's exciting nonetheless for that one reason of a very proven team like scrimming Talon a lot, and this is something that San Francisco coaches said, and in fact, it's jumping forward a little bit, but Houston brought in Drunk Buck, who was an assistant coach on San Francisco and the Team USA that won the World Cup. So he's been around, he's very trusted, and so a lot of people think he brought in Django and Piggy because he scrimmed against them on San Francisco and was impressed by what he saw. So if you trust Drunk Buck, if you trust San Francisco in general, this is a promising tank line. Who knows how it'll actually be, but at the very least, it has more potential, I would say, than a lot of tank lines Houston has had in the past. So
fair.
Good.
That's not saying much, though.
Yeah.
What you're basically telling me is that Junk Buck went back over to Korea and went, "Hey, you kid, do you want to be a star?" They were like, "Yes, sir, please."
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's exciting. We'll see how it pans out, but that's kind of going to be the theme of Houston for most of this. It's exciting, but we'll see how it pans out. The DPS line is definitely their best
to
part,
be
though.
fair, though, to be fair, with the tank lineup, they had a DPS. They benched their main tank for a DPS player on main tank. You really can only go up from there.
True.
But looking good.
Yeah. So they did bring back Dante, which was fantastic. Dante is... I saw just the most ludicrous Reddit post I have ever seen at the end of last year when Drunk Buck was signed, which was basically saying, "Oh, do you think now that Houston has good coaching that Dante will be a star?" What are you talking about? The man has been on the All-Star team every year. Dante is a star. He doesn't have to prove anything to anyone. He was the only bright spot for Houston for 2 years.
Dante's God. He's a great player. Well, not God. Dante is a solid player.
Yeah, he's definitely top 5 in the league, at least at Sombra. Really strong tracer,
Yeah.
He's a really good echo player, extremely versatile. So
I will give you that. He's very versatile. Basically, you want him to play a hero, he'll pick it up. And also, great team leader, very vocal.
For sure.
You're not going to hear me complain about Dante.
Yeah. They also brought back Hydration, finally back on DPS. No more tank.
Him down from tank to DPS. It's fine.
So, I like that. Hydration is another one of those really, really flexible players. He can kind of do whatever he needs to do. So, as evidenced by him playing main tank last year. So, but putting him back on a role that he's actually, most comfortable on and has excelled the most in is just a good thing. So, I'm happy with that for sure.
The pickups that they had this season.
Yeah.
Some of them were good.
Really exciting ones. So they brought over Happy from Guangzhou, who I think Happy is one of those players that if you didn't pay close attention to the APAC region, he kind of could have gone under your radar, but Happy is an extremely good hit scan player. Just so
Happy
good.
Click, you die.
Yeah. He is, phenomenal. They also brought over KSF from Valiant before Valiant exploded, so it wasn't a case of he had nowhere else to go. KSF wanted to go to Houston, so... and KSF, I mean, definitely the worst of the KS duo that Valiant had. KSP was better. But KSF was nothing to scoff at. You know, he didn't start all the time, but when he did, he always looked pretty good, so...
He's another one of these like kind of flex players, and I just think that you're not gonna take Dante out.
Yeah.
So kind of Happy will 100% be the starting like hit scan player, and like KSF can play hit scan as well, but I'm like very sure that KSF is around to like shore up like characters that the others don't play. Or if it's double hit scan meta, he'll go in. But other than that, I'm like, you're probably going to see Dante Hydration or Dante Happy as you're starting to here.
Yeah.
But then you got one more DPS.
Yeah, the big surprise.
It's the myth, legend himself.
Yeah. Jake has retired.
Yes.
Yeah. He retired from his honestly fantastic casting career and is now coming back as a player, but mostly as a coach, he said. So he is going to be an eligible player, but he has made it very clear that he's mostly focusing on a coaching role.
If it's a junk meta, he goes in.
If it's a Junkrat meta, he comes in. But yeah, it's great to see. I actually, last week, for whatever reason, got inspired to go back and watch that game between the Justice and Mayhem, where ZP, he lost connection and Jake just solo casted King's Row and just, it's so good. But yeah, he's back.
He's a great caster just because, you know, whenever you have former players casting, they can give you these insights to things that that you would have never expected to have before. And excuse the dog chilling that. But yeah, they'll give you these insights and like let you catch things or interpret things that you really wouldn't, and that is specifically things that like observers wouldn't get. That's a lot of thing is like esports observing is like this really, really interesting thing where you gotta find the flashy and interesting stuff. But what's flashy and interesting to a spectator is not what's winning the fight most of the time.
True.
Most of the time, you got somebody silently carrying as either the main tank or the support, just being like, you know what, I'm winning you the game. I'm never going to be seen, but it's fine. But Jake will be pointing that out to you.
Yeah,
Jake's like, you saw this guy pop off, but you know who really carried that fight? The Baptiste. And everyone's like, what? And then he goes off and explains it. It's totally fine.
Yeah. So yeah, really strong DPS line. I mean, as a Houston fan who has watched Houston every year suffer because they have a DPS line that is so specialized, it's really good to see them just have everyone. So any meta that comes up, any hero they need to have played, they will finally have someone who will be able to play it. So that's good. No more Season 1 where literally the only reason that Houston went from a top-tier team to garbage was because they didn't have a Tracer player. So...
That was so ridiculous. And then Dante to play Tracer, and Dante was like, I don't play Tracer.
Yeah, so you love to see it, but going from probably the best part of Houston to the worst, we have the support line. They brought over Crimzo from Dallas, who he's not bad. Crimzo is definitely a reliable, capable main support player, but he hasn't ever been someone that I would look at and be like, wow, Crimzo. Look at Crimzo go, So we'll see.
Yeah,
and then,
I mean, Crimzo was always decent on Dallas, but was never the one who was going to outshine everybody.
Yeah, for sure. So
what are you gonna do?
Yeah, what are you gonna do? For sure. So it's definitely good that they have someone, and a very interesting pickup. They brought over Juby from Harrisburg University, which He's billed as like the first collegiate player to Owl, which is true. His most recent team was Harrisburg University, but he has played in Contenders, so it's not
Yeah, he was
straight from
second
college to
win.
Owl. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah,
not straight from, totally unproven at anything but collegiate to Owl. He is a little bit more proven, but still a very big question mark. And honestly, this is what scares me most about Houston, that he's their only flex support. It's only him.
Support, but yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I hope he does well. He supposedly killed it during his trial.
Yeah, supposedly.
But
yeah, who knows, honestly.
If he explodes, you're done.
Yeah. And then, geez. So like I mentioned, they brought over Drunk Buck from San Francisco Shock. He is co-head coach with Harsha, who was there last year. And I like this. Harsha was brought over from Vancouver with a lot of hype around him. And I would say a lot of the time last year, Houston just getting absolutely blown out came down to a coaching diff. Like the amount of times that they just lost, for example, round one of the playoffs when they lost to Boston. A lot of the times the coaches would come out and be like, we thought we had a read in the meta, guess not. Like, it happens way too often. Yeah. So having someone like Junkbuck come over is definitely a good thing, but
somebody who's definitely has proven that he can have a better read on it. And then you have Jake acting as director of talent development, which is awesome. I think him working with the players is a great thing.
Yeah. And honestly, the biggest move this team made in general, this happened at the end of last year, was actually no one we just mentioned. I think it was getting rid of Flame, because I have always been of the opinion that Flame, their former general manager, was just really not good at his job, to put it nicely.
Harsh, but I don't necessarily disagree.
The decisions he made. Like,
no, there was that leak from Dante where Flame was just like, all of the contenders are trash, and then he got rolled by contenders players. So what are you going to do? You get rid of that guy who has absolutely apparently terrible judgment.
Yep.
But Mikey, you mentioned before how ZP left Jake to do the hard carry by himself. And guys, I have something I have to take care of for a little bit, some personal things. So I may be back before the end of the podcast, the end of the stream today. If not, Mikey's going to hard carry this one by himself. He has my show notes, so if he might be able to make fun of me for some things I have here. And so hopefully we'll get some entertainment from that. But maybe I'll be back before this. If not, I apologize, everybody. I apologize to you for having to do the hard carry, Mike. But if not, I'll see you guys next week. But we'll see if I'm going to try to make it back. All right, 3, 2, 1, go. Run.
Yeah, so Houston as a team is... So obviously I take everything I say about Houston with a big old pinch of that great Himalayan table salt you got, but Houston, this is a good first step, in my opinion, for Houston in terms of a rebuild. This is not going to be a team that's going to compete with the big dogs. It's not going to be, a team that is even necessarily upper half of the league, but they're not going to be just an absolute dumpster fire like they were last year. Well, they could be. I'll get to that in a second. But anyways, it's a team that if you come out of this year with 4, maybe 5, more realistically like 4 players that you say, okay, this is our core going forward, we're going to build around this team, that's more than Houston has ever been able to say. And I think that just if you can do that, get yourself at least a good core to go up and be like, okay, this is where our weak spots are for next year, that's when you'll really start to be able to compete a little bit more. But this year, I'm expecting them to be middle of the pack, which honestly I'm happy with, because Houston has been bad for so long, and you don't really like to see that with teams, of course. So, I'd say I'm cautiously optimistic for this team. Very cautiously optimistic, because, look, we see it every year. Teams fall apart for one reason or another. It just sort of happens, So, I could see this team being one of the ones that They had really high expectations for themselves going in, and it, for whatever reason, wasn't working out as well as they hoped. And now they're kind of mentally boomed. This happened to them last year. Of course, it's an almost entirely different team, but yeah, I really hope that doesn't happen. But barring that, I think if you get a few good pieces to move forward in a rebuild, a second year of your rebuild with, then I think you're happy. So hopefully that's what we get, and that's what I'm expecting. Maybe I'm being a little bit too optimistic for this team. I know a lot of people aren't super excited for this team, but I think that there's definitely some potential there. I think if some things really go right for them, they could punch maybe upper middle of the pack. I would be thrilled if they qualified for a tournament, but I also wouldn't be surprised if they don't. That's where I land on Houston. I don't think it's totally out of the question for them to qualify for maybe a tournament if they get the right meta, some things go right. But if they don't, I'm not going to be surprised. But I think overall a really good first step for Houston. And now moving on to a team that is coming into their second step of their rebuild. This is the Toronto Defiant. And I think Toronto Defiant has done a really, really good job here. So starting off with the tanks, they have Beast. He was most recently on American Tornado. And he's fine. He's okay. But he's not going to play a lot, I don't think, because another person they brought in from the Philadelphia Fusion is Sato. Sato is just a really good, really proven main tank at this point. He had his doubters in Season 1, but he's all but shut them up at this point. He has just been about as consistent gets. Definitely coming off a career high season. He's looking really strong, and Sato is going to get the majority of the playtime at the main tank position because Beast, I honestly don't know where he fits in. Maybe he's a Wrecking Ball specialist. Sato's not particularly known for his Wrecking Ball or anything, so maybe that's where he comes in. But honestly, I don't see Beast playing a lot. I think Sato gets the nod, and alongside Sato, his his off-tank buddy is going to be Michelle from Seoul, which is, I think, pretty good. I think it's a solid pickup, but Seoul was about as inconsistent can be last year. I mean, no one had them making to the finals last year, and then all of a sudden they just turned up, and sometimes they would go out and just look like they were going to absolutely dominate everyone that they ran across, and other times they went out there and looked like they were just tripping over their own feet. So I think it's a solid pickup, and I think it's really a year for Michelle to prove what he's got in this league and prove that, you know, he is that player that a lot of people think he can be. So I think it's a really strong tank line potentially here for Toronto Defiant of Sato and Michelle. I can definitely see how it could go wrong, but I think it's a strong tank line, especially considering the rest of this team. So we move on to the DPS now. We have Logix coming back, who I think Logix is... My take on Logix is he's a really strong player, but this is the year that we really, really see what kind of player Logix is. What I mean by that is Logix has always been a good player who's been on bad teams. That's just the Logix MO at this point, right? So now Toronto is moving up the ladder a little bit. We'll get to where I think we'll fall in a bit, but it's time for him to prove that he's not just, you know, the bright spot on a bad team, prove that he is just a really strong, really good player. So it's definitely something that could happen for sure for Logix, but we'll see. They brought over another Philly player. They brought over Hisu, which I think is a really strong pickup. He's a good, you know, flex DPS player. He split a lot of time last year with Ivy. And I think Hisu is a really strong pickup, but what worries me for Hisu is the fact that he split so much time with Ivy, right? Ivy, obviously, great player. Really, really strong. But if you're a player who is splitting time, that tells me that you have a hero pool that is somewhat limited. Maybe that's not the case. Maybe that's totally unfair for Hisu. Maybe it was not that he was bad on those heroes that Ivy was playing, just that Ivy was just a little bit better. We'll see. We'll see. Luckily, Houston's not going to be alone on that flex DPS position. He does have Niced. Not sure how to say it. NA1ST coming over from T1, who is also projectile flex DPS player, really strong May from what I understand. And so I think what you're going to be seeing on the Toronto Defiant this year is kind of a platoon of sorts for Hisu and Naced. I think they're going to split a lot of time. Naced is a player that he's 18 this year, but if you were to look at his Liquipedia page, you would swear that he's older than that, because he's a player that's been around for a really long time in the contender scene. Obviously, for Owl, you have to be 18, so Naced, if you picked up this kid a year, maybe 2 years ago, it would have been Rookie of the Year potential talk, stuff like that, but his stock has kind of fallen a little bit since then. And so we don't really know what we're going to get out of him. I don't think. I think it's difficult to say what to expect from him, honestly. He definitely has the potential. He's shown in the past that he can be a really, really, really strong player. But we don't know. His stock has dropped a lot. Who knows? Who knows how he's going to perform? And I think that it would be very easy for Hisu to just get 100% of the starting time if Nace doesn't show up and look like he is back to that old form that honestly he may have to be if he wants to be a star at the Overwatch League level. So I'm really interested to see how the CPS lineup shakes up and where everyone sort of fits in and what roles they're meant to be playing. But then moving on to the support line, this is, I don't want to say the weakest part of Toronto, but definitely the biggest question marks on Toronto are here at the support line. So they bring over Aztec from Uprising Academy and formerly WGS Phoenix on a loan. He, is a really good player. WGS Phoenix was an extremely good, extremely well-respected Korean contenders team, one of those teams of sort of the runaway of they always have good scouting, they always have good players, they know what they're doing. And so, that may be all you need to worry about, honestly. But we'll see, because we'll see. He's a little bit of a unknown quantity, honestly. But he could be a really, really strong player, for sure. And I'm very interested to see what he brings to the table. Alongside Aztec, we're going to be having Onsoon J from Element Mystic, which is another one of those teams of Element Mystic. You trust the name, right? Element Mystic know what they're doing. They know how to scout talent. They are just a very storied, very historically good contenders team, and I think that Onsoon J, he's another big question mark, but he could be very good. He has a lot of upside. He has a lot of potential. And then we have Lastro. Lastro is coming over from the LA Valiant that kind of blew up. Very strong pickup, I think. I think if you didn't have this third support on the team, you'd be a lot more worried. But Lastro is just, you can trust Lastro. You can trust him at any point, anytime. Lastro is a really, really good support player. He was one of the best players on the Valiant last year. And yeah, he's really good. So Lastro kind of takes me overall for the support line from being very worried about it to being a little bit more comfortable with it, because at the worst you'll have one support that's not really doing amazing, because Lastro, he's always going to be amazing. He just always is. So I think it's a really strong pickup. It really shores up the support line, especially since they're coaching this year. They brought over, I think, an entirely new excuse me, coaching line. They brought over KDG, which was a really strong pickup. KDG from Philly, which is why, if you were wondering why Hisu and Sato were brought over, I think KDG just thinks very highly of them, and so he brought them over. Before that, he was on Seoul, so he's been around for a really long time. He's an extremely trusted head coach. I mean, KDG, Philly has always been a very good team, and last year especially were right there with, they're right there at the top of the league all year, so really strong pickup. They also bring over Yang Won from Vancouver and Ho Chi Lee from Ground Zero Gaming, but yeah, really, really strong tank line, or coaching line. Really, really strong. And so I think a lot of the trust for the Toronto Defiant in my head comes from the fact that they do have KDG there at the helm. And I have a lot of respect for KDG. I think he's an extremely good coach. And I think Defiant without KDG is a team that I would look at and say, we'll see. But with KDG, I'm pretty comfortable saying that there will be upper of the pack for NA. Now, I don't think they're going to be swinging with San Francisco Shock, Washington Justice, teams like that. But I think they'll be, kind of the B tier, if you will, of NA. And I think they'll be pretty solidly in that B tier. Most likely. I can see where this team goes wrong. I can see the path that they can take where they are just a total disappointment yet again. We'll see. We'll see. That's kind of been my catchphrase for the past two teams, but I definitely have a lot of faith in Toronto. I think that they can be really, really good if some things go right, and I hope that those things go right for them, because I would love to see Toronto succeed. It's a team that they've never been great, but it's never been for want of trying. They've always invested in the team. They've always gone out and tried to get good players. They very much care about being good in the Overwatch League, and I would be very happy to see Toronto succeed, and I think that this is a good chance to them. I think they could easily make some tournaments, maybe even compete for some tournaments if some things go right for them. They get a meta they like. But yeah, I do like this Toronto team. I think it's a really, at the very least, strong rebuild for them. Because, like I said, they've just been disappointing for the past couple of seasons. They've always tried, but they just haven't been able to get there. And so I think at the very least, you come away from this season with a stronger core of players than you had last year, because the only returning player on this team is Logix. And to succeed in the Overwatch League, it takes a couple of years sometimes. You need to get that core of players that you can then go out and, iterate on and improve. And I think this is a Toronto Defiant team that has a lot of potential to do that. And so if you're a Toronto fan, expect them to, compete. This is one of those teams that I could see on any given Sunday. Any given Sunday, anyone can beat anyone. But I think this is one of those teams that could definitely beat anyone. I do think they have the potential. I don't think they'll consistently beat the top of the pack, but I think that they'll be good. And I can see the road where Toronto Defiant is one of the best teams in the league. Maybe not this year, but certainly next year I can see it for sure. So really strong rebuild for the Toronto Defiant. And now moving into a team that didn't really need a super large rebuild and has done really well for themselves this offseason, and that is the Florida Mayhem. Florida Mayhem, of course, coming out last year and just proving that they have what it takes to be a really strong team. And I like what they've done a lot. I like it a lot. So they bring over from the Gladiators, they bring over OG, which this is the biggest question mark for Florida. Right off the bat. It's OG. Because last year you had Fate, and Fate, of course, was left for the Shanghai Dragons. And Fate was an extremely good main tank. He was always doing his job, always doing it at a very high level, and OG is someone that, we talked about this a lot in the Gladiators team preview we did a couple of weeks ago, and OG has always had that potential, always thought of quite well, always thought to be someone who could pop off, but he just never really has. He's never really taken that next step to elite status. And I think if you're Florida Mayhem and want to compete that year, a lot of your hopes of the season fall on OG doing just that, taking that next step to elite status, because Florida is a team that wants to compete. They're a team that thinks they have what it takes to be up there. And OG is a very big question mark for me in terms of does he have what it takes. So we'll see, but they did bring back Gargoyle as his off-tank, and I think Gargoyle is probably the best off-tank that OG has ever played with. Not to take anything away from anyone else they've ever played with. Space is an extremely talented off-tank, but Gargoyle is one of those very, very upper echelon of off-tanks. The man is nutty. He is insane. I don't honestly really need to say a lot about him, because if you listen to this podcast, I'm assuming you are pretty well versed in the goings-ons of pro Overwatch, and you know what Gargoyle is and what he's capable of. So Gargoyle is a great off-tank enables the main tank, kind of, because main tank is a difficult position to play. You need help from your team in order to survive, in order to get maximum value. You need particularly help from your off-tank. I mean, when you get right down to it, the very, very basic core understanding of what an off-tank is in Overwatch is they're there to protect people, but also one of their main jobs is to really help the main tank take and maintain space. And so Gargoyle will be able to enable OG and make sure he's set up for as good a success as he can possibly have. And if OG can't do it with Gargoyle, he can't do it with anyone, basically. Especially when you look at the rest of this team. On the DPS line, they did bring back BQB, they did bring back Yaki, both of whom were just insanely good DPS talents. This team had Yaki, extremely good flanker, extremely good, flex DPS player, and BQB, just a hit scan god, really, really strong. And then to shore up that line of BQB and Yaki, which is who you're still going to be seeing starting most of the time, they did bring over Checkmate from OC Gaming. Very likely just going to be a specialist for, this team. He's really versatile, which is good when you're going to be the third DPS to BQB and Yaki, because you need to be pretty versatile to cover, whatever they need to have happen. So I think it's a solid pickup. He's not going to go out and be a superstar, but just as a backup for BQB and Yaki, you can't really complain, because anyone you put there, if they're, good, that's all you really need. You don't need a third superstar DPS, because you can only have two anyways. So it doesn't really matter that much. In the support line, they brought back Gangnam Jin, who was there last year, just really strong, really, really strong support player. One of the absolute bright spots for Florida last year. Always looked just so good. And then to play with him, they got rid of Chris, who has been there for a while, and they brought in Slime from Seoul, which it cannot be understated how much of an upgrade Slime is over Seoul. It cannot be stated enough. Slime over Chris is night and day. I mean, Chris, not to take anything away from Chris, he was a fine support in the league, but Slime is, oh man, he's extremely good. He is so good. It cannot be stated enough how much of an upgrade the support line is over last year, just because Slime is coming in for Chris. That's all you have on the support line. You only have Gangnam Jin and Slime, but that's all you really need. This support line is extremely strong, and like I've been driving home, OG is set up for success, especially now with this support line that he has here, with Slime on that main support. OG has no more excuses. Just no more excuses for OG. And I think a lot of the Florida Mayhem's hopes for this year, they really fall down to just OG. Because I don't look at the rest of this team and say, well, this could go wrong. I look at the rest of this team and I say, wow, this team is extremely good. And OG has everything he needs around him to really be that elite tier main tank. And unfortunately, I think for Florida Mayhem fans, if OG isn't that elite tier main tank, I mean, Florida is a team that they are looking to go from kind of that upper of the pack, but just outside of the best of the pack team, to now they want to be competing. This is the year that Florida Mayhem, thinks, wow, just drank a lot of water. But anyways, yeah, so this is the year that Florida is going to try and compete for the title, honestly. And if OG doesn't step up and become that elite tier, they're not going to do it. Simple as that. This is one of those teams that there's no doubt in your mind looking at it that they're going to be good, they're going to be consistent, but the question is, are they going to be good and consistent like they were last year, or are they finally going to take that next step and be able to compete at that highest level? I think Slime is an extremely good upgrade because I think a lot of last year what held them back was that main support position. So I think Slime is a really good upgrade, but OG, if he doesn't turn it on, then Florida's not going to do it. And that's sad to say that it really falls to just that one player, but it really just, it does. At the end of the day, it really just does. So hopefully this is the team that can get that potential out of OG, but it's yet to be seen. And really just all of the questions around Florida fall on his shoulders. So we will see what Florida Mayhem is capable of. I hope that OG is able to take that next step and be that next big player, but, we'll see. Now moving on to the last team we have here for the evening. We have the Guangzhou Charge. Now this is a team last year that, again, if you didn't pay too close attention to APAC, it could have gone under your radar, just how good this team really is. But this team is really, really good. Like, just phenomenally good. And they brought over some pieces that I really like, but let's get into it. So the tank line is going to be mostly unchanged. They still have Rio at the main tank position. They still have Krong on the off tank position. And, I mean, that's one of the best tank lines in the league, just period. Rio is an extremely good main tank, extremely strong at, all those traditional main tank players. And Krong, he was in the conversation for Rookie of the Year last year. Just an extremely good tank line. And they bring over Jihun from London. So London last year actually was retired for about 3 months in this off season, but when Guangzhou offered him a position, he took it. So he's back. And I don't really see where he falls into this lineup, I guess, as the Wrecking Ball. Because Rio, I don't think his Wrecking Ball is bad, but maybe that's where Jihun falls in. So I think that's what you're going to expect to see, that he'll be the Wrecking Ball specialist if the Wrecking Ball meta pops back up. Right now, it's looking like Wrecking Ball is not going to be the meta when the season starts. It's looking like it is going to be Reinhardt, D.Va, Rush. But we will see where he falls in and how this tank line shrinks up. But I think, regardless, you have just an extremely strong tank line. Excuse my dog scratching his face. Wilson, stop it, please. Wilson, hey, stop. Thank you. The DPS line is also quite good. They have Eileen coming back, and Eileen is just, I mean, really, really good. You miss Nero, you miss Happy from Guangzhou last year, but Eileen was nothing to scoff at ever. Really strong player, and just really happy that he's coming back. They also bring over Mikhaili from Billy Billy Gaming, who is a hit scan player, played extremely well in his tryouts from what we understand, but we'll see if he is able to live up to what Happy was, because I think Happy was really, really strong. And I mean, I'm, as an Outlaws fan, thrilled to have Happy because he's extremely good, but as looking at the Guangzhou Charge, it does hurt them. Happy is a really strong player. And also losing Nero, he went to the San Francisco Shock, which we'll get to in a little bit later. But anyways, just, we'll see. McKaylee has to step up and be that big hit scan player that Happy was for Guangzhou to take that next step. So we'll see. And they also bring over Choi Se-hwan from Element Mystic, which, I mean, you don't really have to question this, because Element Mystic, again, anyone that comes through Element Mystic, you can trust. Their scouting is really good and just really proven. And so anyone that comes over when you know they're on Element Mystic, you can pretty much trust them. And I think that it's going to be a really good pickup. I'm not sure where the flex DPS goes for Guangzhou Charge. We'll see, because Eileen and Choi Se-hwan, I think, are both pretty good. And so we'll see if it's a platoon type thing, if they're going to split time, which I wouldn't be surprised. I think Eileen is used to doing that anyways. So I think a strong DPS line for sure. That will have to be pretty good for them to take the next step, but a lot of the Guangzhou Charge taking the next step is going to fall to the support line. And that is a support line of Mandu coming over from the NYXL and Kariv coming over from the Toronto Defiant. It's an interesting support line. Kariv has just insane potential. I mean, think back to 2019 when he was still on the LA Valiant, and anytime the LA Valiant really won a game in 2019, Kariv just kind of solo carried. I mean, that ridiculous game where he slept Tafari out of the sky like 5 times, something like that. Kariv is a nut. He is extremely, extremely good. Thought of extremely highly by his players, or by his teammates and his coaches. Just a nut. Anyone who ever plays with him has only had good things to say about Kariv. So I think it's a really strong pickup. And Mandu is a bit more of the risk, in my opinion. Mandu didn't really play a whole lot last year on Nixel. He didn't really get that, playing time, really, is what it comes down to. He just kind of didn't. Animo was just better in a lot of situations for NYXL. And so it'll be interesting, because that's all you have as the support line for the Guangzhou Charge. You only have those 2 players. So Mandu, a lot of the responsibility is going to fall on his shoulders. But I think if you're unsure of Mandu, I think some of my fears are kind of being put to rest, because they did bring in a new head coach in the form of Arachne. He was an assistant coach on the San Francisco Shock, which, I mean, you really don't have to say anything more than that. San Francisco Shock has proven to be the best team in the league. The kind of golden, sitting up at the top of the tower, the one that everyone is gunning for. And obviously Krusty is, if not the best, at least one of the best coaches in the league. I really think there's no argument against him being the best coach in the league at this point. But anyways, I mean, working with Krusty, I'm sure Arachne and anyone else who was on that San Francisco Shock coaching staff learned a lot, because Krusty is a really good coach. Not to say that Krusty is the only reason Shock performed well either. I think a lot of that can be credited to the assistant coaches like Arachne. So really exciting pickup at the coaching department for the Guangzhou Charge, and hopefully he can help them take that next step, especially since they also brought over Damon, who was, I believe, the head coach, but at the very least a coach on Element Mystic, which is really good, because like I've been saying, Element Mystic has been a really good contenders team for a very long time. And then an interesting coaching pickup, they bring over Neko with an N as in Nancy, not Neko. But Neko has been around the league. He was a player for a while. He was on Boston Uprising. He was on Toronto Defiant. back when Defiant came into the league for the first time. So he's been around, but just kind of fell out of favor. But as a coach, I'm fine with it. I think Neko played a position that really helped him learn a lot about how the game works and how it should be played. And so, I think it's a really strong pickup for the coaching side of things, the Guangzhou Charge. And I think overall, this coaching staff it looks really good. It looks really, really good. And I think that is one of the biggest reasons I do expect Guangzhou to kind of take that next step and be a really top-of-the-line team. Obviously, this past year, they were quite good, Can't say that they were bad, having finished, I believe they were 4th in the league last year. So, yeah, really strong pickup for sure, and maybe 5th. They might have been 5th. Anyways, I think the coaching line is probably the biggest pickup for this team, because a lot of the times you get the impression that is really what was holding them back. I don't think you have to worry about anyone on this team performing except for maybe Mandu, but you can trust Rio, you can trust Krong, you can trust Eileen. So I think that Guangzhou is, this is their time. This is the year for Guangzhou Charge to really prove that they have what it takes to compete and really prove that they are one of those best teams in the league that I think people have been expecting them to be for a long time. And so, really strong rebuild for Guangzhou Charge. I'm expecting them to be up near the top of that APAC region again. Of course, APAC is a very difficult region. A lot of really strong teams over there, but I think Guangzhou is one of the better ones and should be competitive for every tournament, for the, making a playoff run at the end of the year. If you come to the future or he came back from the future and told me Guangzhou Charge win the 2021 Overwatch League, I would believe you. I'm not expecting them to, but I can see a world where they do. So I think this is one of the really good teams in the league, and I think that they have what it takes if they get, we've seen it before. We saw it on the from the Seoul Dynasty last year. We saw it from London Spitfire Season 1. Sometimes all it takes is being hot at the right time to win the playoffs, to win the league. And obviously Seoul didn't win the league last year, but even making to the finals for Seoul was, a credit to how if you get a good meta that you understand really well and you get hot at that right time, you can win the league. And I think Guangzhou is one of those teams that has the potential to do that. So be excited if you're a Guangzhou Charge fan, because this coaching line is going to take them to the next height. And just a really, really strong team for the Guangzhou Charge. But guys, that is actually our last team. A bit of a shorter episode this year. I guess when I'm alone, I'm able to just fly through and just give all of my thoughts on it. But yeah, thank you guys so much for listening to the Overbyte podcast, episode number 3. And we will be back with Andrew, don't you worry, next week right here at the same Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Overbyte podcast. Check the description for all of our links. Make sure you listen to our new podcast from the same network of me, Ryan, and Eric of the old Overbyte podcast, Control Alt Repeat. You can search for that, and there'll also be a link in the description down below. But thank you so much for listening. I have been Mikey Palacios Swaffman for Andrew Finelli. Have a great rest of your night.